Okay, this was remarkably, this is an incredible time to have footage like this, but this is real footage from 1935. Look at this.
The streets of Houston, Texas, the whole city turned into a maelstrom of flood, people clinging to roofs and awnings. 100 residential blocks and 12 business streets inundated, raging floodwaters 12 feet deep, suburbs like an inland sea, clinging for life to a tree, life-saving by lifeboat, castaways on rooftops, like a rescue at sea, people taken out of windows, 100,000 acres flooded, 2 million in damage, a score of lives lost. In the heart of Houston, guests in a hotel are marooned without food for 40 hours. A cable is rigged between electric light poles, an aerial line to carry supplies. All this was caused by a tremendous downpour, 15 inches of rain. Buffalo Bayou runs through the heart of Houston. It rose 7 inches an hour. And when the bayou does that, Houston is in for a flood. This one, the worst and wildest Houston has ever had.
That was 1935 in Houston, Texas. And as you heard the announcer say there, all that was caused by 15 inches of rain. What Houston tonight is coping with is more like 50 inches of rain. As of today, this storm in Houston has produced the single largest rainfall amount from a single storm that has ever been recorded in the continental United States. When Texas broke that record today, it surpassed the previous record, which had stood since 1978, which was also a storm that hit Texas. Texas has a history, a geographic destiny to be the target of major tropical storms in this country that can be incredibly damaging and that in particular can cause huge flooding. But after that gigantic flood in Houston in 1935, and actually that one in 35 had followed another catastrophic Houston flood just 6 years earlier in 1929. After it happened twice in 6 years, after 1935, Houston was so fed up that they decided to make a significant change to how that city could cope with these kinds of challenges. In 1938, they passed the Rivers and Harbors Act in Texas. The Rivers and Harbor Act, and that created, among other things, the Harris County Flood Control District. And in the 1940s, that local authority in Harris County, where Houston is, and the Army Corps of Engineers, they built two gigantic dams far out west from central Houston. They built these two dams to hold back big reservoirs in what was then a couple of unpopulated corners of Harris County and Fort Bend County. Today, those areas are no longer unpopulated areas. Housing development and suburban sprawl has pushed people that far west from Houston and beyond. But those two dams are still there. One of them is 11 miles long, one of them is 13 miles long. And when the storms still inevitably come and the rain falls and the rivers rise in southeast Texas, those two dams are still at the heart of how Houston copes. The two man-made reservoirs that build up behind those dams that they built in the 1940s, those are still what protects Houston from the uncontrollable inundation of floodwater. And those reservoirs are now famous nationwide because of what's happening in Houston, with this largest rainfall event in U.S. history. The two reservoirs behind those two dams, they're called the Addicks Reservoir and the Barker Reservoir. Today, the Addicks started overflowing this morning. It's the first time that's ever happened at the Addicks Reservoir. The other one, the Barker Reservoir, they thought that might start overflowing tomorrow. Authorities now say they expect that actually to happen tonight.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.